Hello and welcome. Welcome to the last episode on our series, Art Management in Africa, Debate, Discourses, and Practice. My name is Nteyafas, and I'm really excited that it's the last episode, episode 7. Whoa. And they're like, wow, it's been wild in a good way. We've had opportunity to really engage with thought leaders on the continent and of course in the diaspora around everything regarding art management in Africa. So today's episode, like I said, is the last one in this series. We're really hoping to wrap things up and put forward some thoughts and some ideas. And we have two amazing guests, who we're going to introduce um, shortly. I'm dialing in from Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. It's the University of Regina and the Center for Social Engaged Theatre, which I direct, is located on the Treaty 4 and the Métis homeland, the Nahiawak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Lakota, and the homeland of Métis and Métis Nations. We do land acknowledgement in Canada, and for those that are not familiar with it, it's a way of recognizing the historical and the past colonization and all the cultural genocides that have happened in the country, but also speaks to other part of the world and the realities, the historical realities of where we're at today. Why the earth is of the Lord. But we also know that many people have, based on the time that we know, they are being given, they are custodians of the land. And for the land where we are in Regina, another part of Canada, we know that the indigenous peoples they are custodian of the land that were forcefully taken away from them. So as you walk through and think through some of these ideas, I hope that you can think about where you're at yourself. By that, I mean the physical location. Learn to research about the history of where you're at, what kingdoms and empires and all the conquests that happened, how did land move from one hand to another, from one clan or tribe or ethnic groups and all of that to another, because that's really critical in us having a better understanding of where we're at and hopefully where we're moving forward towards. I want to pass it on to my co-host, Natasha, to introduce herself. Over to you, Natasha.
Thank you, Taiwo. Greetings, everyone. My name is Natasha Eck. I am located in Canada, Ontario, which is the traditional treaty of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation and the Mississauga peoples. I'm happy to be here today. I'm an artist, producer, and really excited just to move forward with our last episode and excited to see what happens next. So I'm thankful to be here. Thank you, Taiwo.
Thanks, Natasha. And Natasha and I, we've been co-hosting this episode, this series together, and it's been remarkable and amazing working with Natasha. Special thanks to our partners, HowlRound Theatre Commons, for believing in this vision and for going all the way with us. And thanks to Thea Rojas for her work since the inception of the series. Thanks to our partners at the Center for Social Engaged Theatre at the University of Regina. Thanks to Kininso Creatives. And also Theatre International and mobile and their social enterprise mobile research lab for the research and all the background work. Thanks to Pan-African Creative Exchange, PACE, for their partnership and their collaboration, and of course thanks to La Cité, a unit, the French faculty at the University of Regina. I will ask our guests to quickly introduce themselves, and then after that, I'll do like a framing, just a quick summary of what we've talked about in the past series, 6 episodes, And then from there, we get a conversation started. So I'll start with Rosette from Uganda. Rosette, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Tayo. My name is Rosette Nteyafas. I'm based in Kampala, Uganda, which is known as the Pearl of Africa. I am a festival and arts manager, and I am also a poet. And I also produce works in Uganda. I work with the Tebere Arts Foundation and also with the Kampala International Theatre Festival. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Rosette. Now pass it on to Funmi.
Hello, Taiwo and Natasha, and hello, everyone. My name is Funmi Adewole Elliott. I'm based in England, in Leicester to be exact. And I've just founded FAE Studios, which is a platform for my performance. I'm a performer, but I also work as a consultant and a dramaturg and a creative facilitator with arts organizations in Africa and in the diaspora.
Thank you. Good to have both of you, and I'll speak more to the. I'll add some couple of things. I have the privilege to have their CV in front of me, so I'm gonna add. They have been very humble. I'm gonna add some things to their CV when I call them to speak. When we start engaging in our conversation with them. So over the past 6 episodes, we've tried as much as possible to offer some perspectives around art management in Africa. From really thinking of what does it even mean to the critical issues, to potential solutions, how are practitioners and folks navigating the scene and the landscape on the continent, and what are the tips and ideas that can help us, that can sustain us as we move through different ways of engaging and managing the art on the continent. Within the S6 episode, we've also highlighted some key ideas from capacity building, the need to build capacity, whether it's in fundraising, whether it's in intellectual property, to contract and all of these kind of things, to also the conceptual ideas around art management on the continent. Of course, we're reminded that Africa is a continent, not a country. So as much as we want to speak of it as a continent, we also need to be mindful of the peculiarity of the various countries within the continent. However, we also highlighted the fact that there are a lot of commonalities in some of the things we experience, whether it's in aspect of leadership, whether it's in aspect of cultural policy, the need to build capacity, training, the need to have, to engage in robust research, and all of these things that can really help us to foreground and build the sector in a more robust way, so that whether people that are here right now or those that are coming behind, they don't have to start from the scratch. And we're giving that overall summary. We hope that you can listen to all the 6 episodes as a way to kind of give us the base as we invite Rosette and Funmi into a conversation, which we're really asking ourselves the question, what next? The reason why we're asking the question, what next, is that it's really on multiple levels. Is that one, now that we've had the opportunity to engage and really think about the challenges, the opportunities, and all of those things, we've been able to bring leaders, thought leaders who have really done remarkable things in art management within their context across the different countries, from Nigeria to Kenya to South Africa to Tunisia to Cote d'Ivoire. Like, we've brought in, really, to some degree, again, we're not obviously covering the entire 54 countries, but at least we've been able to bring some level of representation rather. To Namibia, we've been able to bring so much into the space for us to be able to think around this. Now that we've been able to do all of that, what next? How can we start thinking about the future of art management in Africa? what are the questions we need to ask ourselves? And because the quality of the questions we put on the table would also determine the quality of the response we get. And the quality of the questions we ask ourselves will also help us to some degree to define, would determine the quality of the future we can imagine and reimagine as a collective. So we feel that there's, we're in safe hands today because our two guests, they are really working not just only as artists, but as producers, as dramaturgs, as consultants, and more broadly within the performance practice space. So the first question we're going to ask them is really them reflecting on the 6 episodes. What are their thoughts? I know they've gone through the 6 episodes, or not everything, but some of it, they've engaged with it. What are their initial thoughts on those episodes? And I think I'll start with Funmi. And like I said earlier on, I'm going to add a little bit to their bio, both of them. So please just permit me to flex their muscle a little bit here. And I think I started doing that at the beginning of the series. Again, because what we always hear all the time is that, these things do not exist on the continent. That's not true. We have remarkable folks who are really working in this space. And all of the ideas that we're working on and they're engaging with, they have to learn through, by doing. And so it's really important for us to really present them as they are and say, listen, we've got all of these things, on the continent. And the fact that it's not coming from the West doesn't mean it's not valid. So Funmi Adewole Elliott is the founder of FAE Studios, which platforms for her arts consultancy, dramaturgy, and performance practice. She designs and delivers professional and sector development workshops, labs, and talks in education, and for organizations that support arts practitioners in African, diaspora, and transnational context. And Funmi and I, we've been able to work together in PACE on Dramaturgy Lab, which was really fascinating, I think, 2020, 2021, or 2022, I think 2 or 3 of those years. I can't remember, everything is blurry now. But really remarkable practitioner and, of course, scholar. She has worked in Europe, in Africa, and Canada with over 30 years experience in the industry. She holds an MA in Postcolonial Studies, a PhD in dance studies, and a professional certificate in education. And she also runs a community interest company called Enact Arts. So with that, we're not just only talking about practitioner, we're talking about a researcher, a scholar who is really grounded. So let's start with Funmi. What are your thoughts about this series? The series entirely, the ones you've engaged with. And then after that, I'll introduce Rosette also, and then offer her this space to reflect on the questions. Over to you, Funmi.
Yeah, from what I've seen of 6 episodes, it's extremely exciting. Because the speakers, they have practical knowledge in developing arts administration and productions within Africa. Much of it's from lived experience. Much of it is learning on the job. Many of them responded to a need. Many of them worked for, a decade or more before they even took a training course in the area. And there was such passion of people say, well, this is my calling, and they just went for it. And what I see in their biographies and in their profiles is the legacy for the future of arts management as both a discipline and a profession in the continent.
Thank you so much, Funmi. Thank you. I want to pass it on to Rosette. Rosette is a seasoned producer and art manager with over 12 years of experience coordinating, managing, and producing art events, festivals, and capacity building programs in Uganda and across Africa. She currently serves as the line producer for Tebere Arts Foundation and the Kampala International Theatre Festival. During her 8-year tenure with the Bayimba Foundation as the director of Bayimba Academy, Rosette played a pivotal role in managing and producing the Bayimba Festival and art education programs And Rosette's passion for development of the creative arts sector in Uganda and Africa is evident in her dedication to mentoring young artists in production, management, and art management. And at the first episode, we actually had the executive director of Bayimber Foundation. So it's all coming to a circle. So over to you, Rosette. What are your initial thoughts about the art management in Africa series?
First of all, I'm very excited that we are having this arts management series, which we really need in the African continent. Listening to the different guest speakers, I felt I identified myself in several of the topics they spoke about, like learning on the job. And then there's a clear need in African arts management to improve on our governance systems. As they were discussing and sharing the information, I also noted that there's also a need to archive and document what we have been doing. There was such a rich wealth of information from each guest speaker, and it is great information to help us who are already practicing and those who are coming in the future to practice, to be able to use that information to improve the way we work. And also I realized in the past, there's some areas that I was not interested in getting involved in, something like cultural policy. But it's until I was in a situation where I was stuck. I will give an example. When we were doing the festival in 2021, the theater festival, for the first time after 9 years of producing the festival, the Media Council of Uganda requested us to submit documents, and this had never happened in 9 years. And now it was just a week to the festival, and we had already booked flights for artists. So they say that if we don't get those permits and we don't submit the details, we will not continue with the festival. So that put us in a position where we now needed to understand how to deal with it, getting legal consultation, and then also having artists support us by tweeting, speaking about this regulation. And we had so many artists who had, like young artists who had produced radio drama series. And when they heard that their drama series would not be showcased, they were very depressed. So they started tweeting that Media Council is stopping us. Now it became a Twitter war with Media Council. But it's then that I realized that the importance of having associations, the importance of having unions, the importance of having guilds, the importance of understanding the regulations and using them to defend yourself if you have such a scenario. Because as a festival and as an organization, we felt left alone. We had the support of the artists, but we did not have the support of a bigger authority in terms of an association or the UNCC, the National Cultural Center, which has a mandate for artists in Uganda. So as an arts manager, that was an area that I thought it is for other people. But I feel that every component of arts management is important. And sometimes, or most times, we do not understand how broad arts management is in Africa. Yeah.
Thank you, Rosetta, and thank you, Funmi. Thank you for your initial thoughts around the series. So that leads us nicely into our first question. Our second question is, how do we intentionally equip or prepare future arts managers to be ready and to navigate the challenges that we are all aware that are ahead of us or ahead of them? And that first question, I'm going to send that over to Funmi, if you wouldn't mind sharing your advice on
that. Well, thank you. I will say first, it's a bold ownership of the space. And I don't think we boldly own the space of arts management cultural and creative industries. And I think that is also because we are dealing with the legacies of colonialism. And sometimes there's a divided feel about the cultural industries. Is it real? Is it right? Is it a bastardization of our culture? I don't sometimes feel a full ownership of it. So when artists sometimes make something, they will emphasize the traditional aspects of what they made. They won't talk so much about what frameworks or methodologies they brought to the work. We might make work within the theatre, but we will talk about the origins of the work as it came from the communities and not talk about how it was operating in the theatre. And as a result of that, a history of our work within the creative and cultural sectors hasn't really developed. There is a history of practice that has gone over time. And just to give an example, when the first national dance companies and ensembles were established in across the continent, I think about 17 of them were established in the late 50s, early 60s, as African nations became independent. Of these national companies, I've only seen books on who? Ghana well documents what their dance companies did, and I've seen some on Senegal, but there was Ivory Coast, there's Congo, there's so many companies, but there is no documentation of that. And the thing is that is when dance became a profession in African nations. Before that, like my mother's generation, the idea of dance as a profession didn't make sense. That doesn't mean that dance wasn't very important to the generation. It's very important. You know, if you followed my mother to an event and you didn't dance when other people were dancing, she felt embarrassed. However, when you said dance is a profession, very odd to her, because you danced and did other things. You were a market woman and danced. You were a nurse and danced. So how does it become a profession? So it was a new concept, the idea of being a professional. And the first civil servants, dancers as civil servants, were with the National Dance Company. It was the creation of a new economic context, and it also brought a new another currency to our inherited traditional practices. So now people in village areas could say, you know what, if I go to the city and perform in a hotel, I can actually earn some money with the dance that I grew up with. So this is a new context, which I think sometimes we're not completely comfortable with, and therefore have not analyzed. And I'm saying we need to own it with all its contradictions. Because in it is how we govern modern Africa. Because it's always the unique thing of modern Africa is that, and when I say modern Africa, I just mean Africa of today, is that there's a combination of traditional pre-colonial institutions, as well as the ones that come post-colonial. So you have your university, but you still have your guilds, you have your hunter societies, and you have your monarchies as the federal government. And as the cultural industries, we're working in between all of this in the most vibrant way. And therefore, it needs its own history, i.e. of how have people done it, starting from the governments having established these national dance companies. We have not written about those kind of things, the decisions they had to make. Most of them located those companies within tourism, but that's still part of the creative industry. Where are the books on tourism and what frameworks worked or not? So for us to prepare future arts managements is to say, there has been at least 60 years of Africans managing the arts within Africa in various contexts, within governmental contexts, within the cities. I remember in one of the episodes, Taiwo, you talked about starting your company in Ife, 4 hours from Lagos, which is a different context to working in Lagos. We have various contexts. We work transnationally. A lot of people working, for example, in contemporary dance are working transnationally, but there are other people doing cultural, working in cultural industries where they're working between communities within, like if you run a cultural dance troupe, for example, you might be just working within on a local level between certain local governments. All of these are various contexts which require their histories, because in understanding who are the players, who are the people that initiated things, we begin to understand what we have developed and value that place, and also understand how do we deal with the contradictions. Furthermore, we need to develop a theory of praxis. You know, like Rosette was saying earlier, just before we came on this call, how people have developed many things on the job. And those people that have developed things on the job, they've developed models which they can hand down. Those models need to be documented. They need to be in books. They need to be on courses. You will not find those models in the West. Even if those people went to study in America and come back and implement some of the ideas, they adapt those frameworks, they develop new ones. And we need to pass to our future generation what we have done, what we are doing, our mistakes, our triumphs. And I think that's the best way we can produce the art managers of tomorrow, so they don't come into this idea of a vacuum, that they're living in between spaces. They're not validated by anyone. Are they cultural? Are they not cultural? They don't come with that. They don't come with that baggage. They just go for it because they're standing on the shoulders of people who are doing it and are still doing it.
Oh, I need to exhale. Thank you, Funmi. Very powerful and right on. Thank you for taking us through that and explaining, you know, the need to develop a theory of practice and also boldly owning the space and understanding what has been done before, looking back over those 60 years of robust, you know, development and structures, things that were happening, and what that could look like in modern Africa. Like, what could that look like? Analyze and what that could look like today. So, yeah, with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Rosette. Rosette, is there anything that you'd like to add or speak to in terms of how can we best prepare future art managers for the challenges ahead?
Thank you, Natasha. Just to build on what Funmi has said, start with changing the mindset. As she said, there is, when you haven't received education and you don't know where to start from, you feel like you're starting from the vacuum, but there's something that you already have. And the idea of the fact that most of us in African countries have had British education or colonized education. So there's a certain way you're thinking that the only way I can operate is, for instance, managing spaces or developing spaces. It doesn't necessarily have to be as Europe has developed their spaces. You don't need to build an opera space when there's no opera in Africa. So that's part of what I mean about changing your mindset, being able to build what is suitable for your environment. So as we're preparing future arts managers, we need to give them that confidence and help them change their mindset and let them know that they should build what is suitable for their environment. That means that they have the opportunity to create something new or to use what is within their environments. As in my practice, we've always found challenges in Uganda. For instance, in theater, we present our productions in the theaters, but in Uganda, there are 3 theaters in Kampala. So that means you're limited with space, and you may find that the space is fully booked. So you have to find other spaces that are not necessarily designed for theater and reconstruct them, changing unconventional spaces and using them for productions. That can be the same in terms of building infrastructure. You need to build an infrastructure that is suitable for your climate. You will not build a building that is suitable for a winter in the Sahara Desert. And then you also have to put in mind the kind of community that you're working with. for instance, when I did some work in Mali and they were curating a festival, I was really moved by the way they curated their performances within home states. So the curators of the festivals have a relationship with the communities that they work with, and the communities offer their houses, and you come and watch a performance from that setting. So that's something that is suitable for that kind of setting, that is a communal setting. So many times arts managers are stuck with what they have seen in Europe, what they have seen elsewhere, but what is within your space? What is working in your space? How can you use your environment to create something that will work for you, instead of importing something that is not going to work in your space? And then also in terms of building their confidence by giving them platforms to be able to learn, building confidence and also building capacity through our already existing arts organization, already existing festivals, to provide avenues for mentorship, avenues for volunteering, avenues for internship. And through working with those organizations, they get the hands-on skills, and they also get the soft skills, professional skills. How do you communicate to an international group? How do you communicate to a local group? And how do you present yourself? Because in Africa, you kind of have this feeling that I'm not good enough, I don't know how to speak. But in order to market yourself, you have to learn how to present yourself before people. You have to learn how to speak. You have to learn how to write. You have to learn how to position yourself. You have to learn how to network. So additionally, encouraging the young people to believe in themselves and also invest in themselves, to not wait for someone to lift you up, but to go to the networks you're looking for. For instance, if you're in a country and you're interested in doing arts management, you can go to the cultural centers that are in your country, see what they are doing, learn from that. Look for internship opportunities. Don't wait for someone to bring it to you. Go to the spaces that you are interested in and ask. And then lastly, encourage them to ask for opportunities, there's nothing shameful in asking. If you keep quiet, no one will know what you're doing, what you're interested in. But if you ask and you tell someone, I am interested in arts management, I'm interested in fundraising, can you teach me how to fundraise? Can you show me how to do this? And then they can show you, or they can direct you to a network that has that information. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Rosetta. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to pass this over to Taiwo.
Well, thank you so much. Both of you kind of offered us some thoughts that I think can help us to rethink, the change of mindset. For me, earlier, before we got onto the call, you were talking about the idea that some of these things, it's at the conceptual level. And I think that there's a reason why the conceptual level has to be clarified, and it helps us to change here. Because as Rosette, you're talking about fundraising. I'm thinking, when we fundraised for a project we did in Nigeria in Tebere International, we didn't go through the regular route. There is a way I'm going to fundraise in Ife that I can't fundraise like that in Lagos, that I can't fundraise like that in Canada. There's a way I'm going to fundraise I'm going to manage my organization in Regina, Saskatchewan, that I'm not going to do like that in Toronto. And so understanding the context is really critical to changing our mindset, that whatever we learn from the West, whether from the book and all of those things, we learn it from the West, coming down here, in our own context, we have to then say, what does that really mean? Again, going back to that mindset, changing of our context and the conceptualization of our own realities. it's really very critical. Still kind of speaking to that, I wonder if both of you or any of you can, if there are examples of some of those mindsets that we need to unpack within the continent that you've experienced maybe in your own, in your consultancy or in your practice, or of course within the context of art management. That you just want to give one or two examples. Earlier on, Rosette, you were saying I can't speak this language, or I'm not bold enough. I'm not like there's a mindset that sponsors those kind of attitude or a way of looking at ourselves. There's a kind of anyway, I don't want to go on and on and on, but if there are examples you just want to offer here from your own experience and how we can rethink that.
Yeah, I would say one thing I'd like to speak to is the contextualization of what goes on in African countries. Both of you have talked about various audiences, like Rosette was talking about a local audience. How would you relate to a local audience? Sometimes we say, is this African arts or not? But within Africa, within an African country, there are so many different types of audiences. There's not one African audience. I remember speaking at a Q&A in Britain, and someone said they saw a show from an African company, and they said for them it looked too westernized, and said, who in Africa watches this? And I said, well, there are people that do. So there's this idea that it's one type of art. Maybe if it looks very traditional, then that is African. But there are so many people in Africa. Is the fastest urbanizing continent in the world, if I'm correct. There are young people born in cities that have never been to a village, or they go to a village later in life. They are going to grow up very differently from young people born in rural areas, and in that idea that there's one type of art representing everything. And if we produce generations of managers that say, this is the kind of art that represents the whole of, it's too reductive, and it stops people from learning how to manage. In the city of Lagos, there are several audiences. Yeah. If I decide I want to put, if I take a production as I want to put it into the National Theatre, I am looking at a different audience to say I want to put it in the Monsoon Center or in Terracotta. These are different, they are geared to different audiences. If I decide certain productions will suit better University of Lagos because of the subject matter. And if I wanted to work with more local people, then maybe it's better that I go to the person who has the biggest compound in that area and say, Oga, can we do a production in your courtyard? We are very complex within Africa, yet we flatten it as if there's only one thing going on. And I think we need to open up that. There's a festival that happens in Senegal, which I think is amazing. It's called Le Ville en Mouvement, if I'm correct, which means the moving city. And it's curated by Fatou Cissé. She's a contemporary dance choreographer. Her dad ran a dance school, one of the first dance schools in the country. She trained there, she trained abroad, she's performed all over the world. And she started a dance festival where she used people's backyards. And if you go into those festivals, you'll see white people dancing in those backyards because they have international guests. They perform like the sides of the streets. The local people sit on the side of the streets to watch the performances, which are taking place in the sand. If international artists want to come, she will inform them of where they're going to perform and the style of the performance. It's amazing. I've only seen it on film. But she's someone who has danced all over the world. She's danced in different countries. She won an international choreographic prize. She knows her different audiences and who she's trying to work through the art and what we're trying to do with the art. So one thing is this mindset of acontextuality, where some artists think African art is only facing the world, and therefore their art is a dialogue between their country and the West, which is not bad, but it's not the only type of African art. There's African art which is inwards towards local audiences, or between young people at the university and the city. So this a contextualization where we don't think of art in any particular context, you know, and we just call everything African and it's all the same type. I think it's a mindset which closes down creativity on how we can curate, organize, plan, fund, because you have to fund with that context in mind. And if you don't see the context, you only think there's only one type of art coming out the city. Obviously, if you don't have a sense of structure, you don't look at the opportunities or the options. So a big mindset shift is to shift away from the acontextual idea that there's only one kind of art, one kind of audience, and that audience is the real African audience, and we're only making for that. I think needs to, you know, that needs to be broken. That's one thing I would say. A good artistic management discourse will help shift that.
Absolutely, Funmi, I do agree with you. Yeah, I think looking at everything from New York perspective is leading us, you know, the big cities, is leading us into is leading us into a hole that you know, will be, you know, finding our way back is will be challenged. Canada, for example, if you're running a theater company in Newfoundland, Labrador, which is way out there, of course, Canada is very big. The way you're going to manage your audience and all of that, it's different from Toronto, because Newfoundland, Labrador is a fishery environment. It's very rural. You go to even more broadly the transatlantic in the Atlantic region versus going to Vancouver. Vancouver is I mean, is one of the most expensive cities in the entire country, even North America, housing and all of that. It's still within the same country. And then go to Lethbridge or Edmonton, which is in the middle of the country, it's on the prairies, or go to Quebec. So I think that the West also have this understanding already. But again, because we've only seen things from the lens of New York, of London, of Paris, of all of these big centers, we're not thinking about the peculiarity, the context of each place. And I think that becomes very critical. In Ife, for example, we have OAU, Funmi Adewole University. That university changes the entire fabrics of our theater or any organization that you want to run, because that means you have a set of audience, students, at a particular time in the year, if you're catering for them. We also have a big federal hospital where some surgeries actually are done there, versus going to a north, or think of Lagos and all of that. I think that context that you've mentioned is something really critical. Rosette, if there's anything you want to add in terms of examples, I know you've mentioned Mali. If there are other examples within Uganda, or other spaces that you've worked, that really speaks to this idea of mindset. And I know we're spending time on this mindset, but for me, that's where it all starts. This mindset that I'm not good enough, because I'm always looking at myself from the big city, from the perspective of the big centers. Oh, I don't have X number of dollar or X number of money. This is not up to my budget. This is not like we're always looking at everything from this single narrative mindset. And I think it's not helping us in some regards. So sorry, we're spending more time on this, but I think that hopefully these examples can help folks who are watching this later, or who are watching our watch later, and even us ourselves, to be reminded that this contextualization that we're talking about, knowing our environment, knowing our audience, really critical. So Rosette, anything you want to add to that before we move to our next question?
Yes, changing mindsets in terms of being flexible. not being, I don't know what word to use, it static or stagnant or looking in one direction, but having an open mind to be able to explore opportunities within your environment, because in Africa, we have so many opportunities, but because of the education we have, we're only thinking in a linear way and not thinking as problem solvers. Also changing our mindsets as not just being people who are copy paste ideas, but thinking about developing ideas for our situations. And that may also require you to start thinking, what kind of management module do I need to initiate in my environment? Yes, I've learned something maybe in the UK, but it's not applicable in Uganda. So what do I do to create something that is going to work within my environment? So that's the flexibility that I'm talking about. Or perhaps also helping the future managers free their minds and open up and think and problem to think and not give them solutions. Like asking questions of what will you do, not waiting for you to give, not waiting for someone outside Africa to give you a solution, but saying this is the solution for this place. Changing the mindset in terms of collaborating. In Africa, it has always been that we have worked in communities. We have exchanged goods. So you may not have money, but you may have something someone else has or needs. So how do we exchange those goods? How do we exchange? How do we collaborate? An example I'll give, working with Baimba and working with Faisal, I learned so much about collaborating and working with other organizations. You may have a platform, but not have the content, and someone else has the content. So if you provide the platform, for instance, the festival, and someone is an artist and needs a place to showcase, or it's an arts organization that has been producing work and has no output, you provide the platform for them to come and perform. Or sometimes they need marketing and maybe they don't have the money to pay for the catalog or to pay in advertisement, but they have equipment, and you as a festival, you need equipment. So you strike a deal and say, okay, you provide us with equipment, we'll put you on our publicity material, we'll give you space to exhibit your work, to be able to showcase your work. And then also collaboration in terms of working outside of the city center. You're speaking about the global aspect, but even within our countries, all of us are flocking into the city center. I think there's something that was said during the past episodes to think globally, but I would add, think globally, work locally. What I mean by that is within your setting, within your space, you can work locally, but in a global, looking at the global aspect. And encouraging the mindset to move from the usual spaces. You may have a space in the village, but you're afraid to do something there. But there's so much that you can explore. You have land, you can talk to like your family may have land and you're looking for a place to build infrastructure. So you begin from there, you talk to your family members, what can I do? I have a friend of mine called Jackie who started up a ballet school for children, but she started it from, she made up her mind that when she's going to do this, she would first not she was going to treat it as a business and not rely on donor funding, because she had seen how many dancers had depended on donor funding and their work had collapsed. So she asked her father to give her his garage, a certain home in Machindi. And she developed the space and started all dance classes for young children. And she had collaborations with other organizations like Kampala Music School that is dealing with music and young children. So she was thinking out, that's an example of thinking outside the box. What do you have within your reach? What can you use? What can you do to develop it further? Don't look for something that is without your reach. First, start with what is within your reach and begin developing that. And as you do that, you will find people who are like-minded to work with. And also the mindset that you are an island, that you can do everything on your own, needs to be broken. We cannot do everything on our own. We need each other to move forward. So having a collaborative mindset that in order for me to do this project, who can I work with within my facility? First, look within your means, then you can look internationally and spread your wings.
Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Thanks, Rosette. Funmi, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I wanted to add something that it sort of came to me as Rosette was even speaking in terms of mindset shift. Sort of to explain what in order to sort of explain what I want to say, I'll give a little story. I was in a conference once, and a colleague of mine stood up and said he was concerned about the neo-colonial impact of one of the French cultural centers in Nigeria. And he said because they were giving out certain grants, what was happening is that all the young people had dropped doing cultural dances or cultural dance performances, and were now everybody had now become a contemporary dancer. And I said, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. How many universities do we have, even in Lagos, that we are under threat from one cultural center, a foreign cultural center? Obviously, if a cultural center, a foreign cultural center starts working in an African country, they will attract a certain kind of audience and maybe a certain kind of artist, you know? Why should that dominate everything, though? That should just be one thing that's going on in a corner. If there was a dance competition, university level dance competition for people doing cultural dance, are you trying to say that these young people won't dance it? They won't enter the competition? But because there's no local competition going on for dance, obviously the only competition is being run by a foreign cultural center, then it looks like they've dominated the whole landscape. And now the example I'm giving is a few years old, because now I'm seeing something different. I think I saw on the internet recently someone doing a competition around Ewi, which is a traditional Yoruba poetry. And suddenly all these young people who you only speak English are now jumping out, speaking, using their language to do poetry chanting. If we have to own that this economy in which we're doing creative industry is a different one, we have to put mechanisms in it to encourage a growth or an interest. If there's no kind of a system, no kind of network, no kind of mechanism, no kind of structure, then people sit around thinking, because it's not like when we lived in villages where you lived with your grandmother and your great-grandmother and your uncle and your auntie, and you all got together at night and sang together, and then you went to the farm together and you exchanged. Everybody's living, when people live in cities or people grow up and we're all living separately, we have to create the networks to bring people together, and we have to create the mechanisms to activate and inspire people to make use of what's in their environment culturally and bring it into an industry space. I think that we have much more power if we look at the infrastructures that we have. There was a Kenyan choreographer I interviewed some years ago called James Mue. And what he did is he noticed that there were these community dance and community centers all over Nairobi. Some of them were established in pre-colonial times, and most people there, they were rented by, you know, local communities for marriages and births and activities. He didn't want to only rely on foreign agencies. So what he did is he created a tour of local communities, local community centers. And he also collaborated with local DJs. So he was doing contemporary dance. The DJ will come and local audiences will come in. In fact, they started calling the contemporary dance Kente. You know, they made up a local slang for it. You know what I mean? And he also, into his own choreography, started introducing elements that people liked, because he said he noted audiences liked acrobatics. So he introduced acrobatics into his own contemporary dance and used local infrastructure. Part of his dance company went off and toured Europe, but part of them were touring local, using the local infrastructure. So this idea that we have to lock into what foreign agencies are doing and have this one linear way of thinking, and if it's only the transnational that matters and nothing else matters, that is one mindset shift that is really required, that we should look at arts management as looking at all these variety of audiences and different domains within the country.
So both of you have raised some really hardcore points here. I've spoken to artists where they feel that they are only validated by transnational, by taking their show abroad. That's when they think they matter. They think that local touring, working in their communities is just the stepping stone to the main thing. The main thing is going to Europe. The main thing is having these transnational, and not, again, I'm not saying those things are not, you know, they are not great, they are. But what we're saying here is that change of mindset, that every of those levels matter. They matter. They're valid. If I should operate in them, rather than just think that we have to be locked. For me, use the word locked in this transnational. It has to be. It's like we're just one, you know, unidirectional. The other thing is, last month, we were in Salzburg on arts and culture cohorts as a fellow, and my own presentation was, I presented on networks and alliances, and for me, exactly what you're saying that I talked about, that, you know, and I use the metaphor of the rhizome. The rhizome is designed in a way that it's all over, it's not just linear. It has different nodes and pods. Like, it's not just one way, like, you know, it's not just one taproot and it's just go straight. No, rhizomes has multiple nodes, multiple points and connections, because it's designed that way. And my idea was, I was thinking that we need to think about networks that way, alliances that way, so that it's not just one thing, because these cultural institutions, which are, again, important, by the way, we have to give them kudos. They've done extensively. In fact, you know, in some regards, they've been able to help us sustain some things and bring some artists to life and put spotlight on things and all of that. Places where our cultural policies and our government and leadership have, you know, failed to some degree, they've been able to help us, you know, rally around and do something. So they occupy a very important ecosystem, occupy important space in the ecosystem. Of course, some might argue that, yes, they will be working based on their own diplomatic missions and vision and all of that. I get it. But at the same time, they are occupying a space, an important one, that if we have our existing infrastructure, from like you're talking about, if we have our existing infrastructures and all of that, we won't be locked in that it has to be that one single thing. So I think what both of you are really offering here is really critical, that this piece around change of mindset. And if we can change that mindset that we're not good enough for ourselves until we get validation from external, or our practices and our approach is not good enough until we look to other places and import, copy and paste. You see, these mindsets sift through everything that we do. It sifts through literally in our operations, in our methodology, in our conceptualization, in literally every single thing that we do. And that's what the challenge we're having, and also the opportunity we're offering here. Say, can we think in a different way and offer us a different thought? I'm going to ask the next question, and after I pass it to Natasha so that I don't keep editorializing and so that I can restrain myself, because you can see I'm very passionate about what we're talking about here. I want to shift our gear to the next question, your thought around existing resources. A big part of the thing that came out, which we all know already, part of idea that came out of this series is the need for not just only build capacity, but to have resources where, folks can come in, managers, practitioners can have something to refer to. Because we always feel like we're starting from the scratch. We always feel like there's nobody that is doing this that I can go learn from. And also at times, many of our universities are not really helping because we don't necessarily have programs that can really help us and all that. And that's not only peculiar to Africa. Let's just be honest. It's not just an African thing, okay? When it comes to art management, art administration, and all of that, around the world, it's something that I think the entire ecosystem need to be more intentional about. But on the continent of Africa and maybe cross-border, within the diaspora that speaks to Africa, what are the existing resources that you are aware of that you want to share with us? Whether it's in administration, whether it's in fundraising, it's in producing, it's existing resources that you thought of that might be of interest to folks that might be that are within this context. Rosette, do you want to go and then we'll pass it to, I know that Funmi had the last take. Well, let's have you and then we'll pass it to Funmi. That's okay.
Thank you very much. The existing resources I thought of is the human resource across the continent where people have already studied arts management. And I will start with this platform. It's already an existing resource because you already have guest speakers, some who, like Ahmed, who have studied arts management. So tapping from those who have particularly studied arts management and can offer courses or can pioneer the development of arts management courses within across the continent. That's what we could start with. And then platforms and organizations that have mentorship programs within their organizations. I will mention Mohammed of a center, I didn't get his center for the one from South Africa, who mentioned that he has intern mentorship opportunities for emerging artists. And then what Kevin is doing in Kenya in terms of the creative entrepreneurship leadership course that he has. And then there's another platform which is called African Leadership Academy, which has an arts section that provides opportunity for young artists to develop their artistic practice, but they are focused on entrepreneurship. And I feel that as arts management, we only see art in terms of looking at it only in the non-profit making, but art is also, there's also the commercial side of it, the business side of it. So I also think that we need to tap into innovation hubs and market our art form in terms of businesses. So in looking at creative entrepreneurship, but the platforms will not necessarily be looking at arts, but looking at businesses. So an arts manager is not just an artist. An arts manager is looking at taking their organization or a project they want and looking for investors, not just looking for donors. And then also the idea of diversifying income, not looking at only one way within one way in the arts ecosystem. I'll give an example of Batalo East. That is a dance organization in Uganda that mixes contemporary dance with urban, with traditional dance. But one of the ways they are trying to diversify their income is to grow coffee, so it can supplement their income. So the idea of also teaching and tapping into other resources, agriculture, going into real estate, or even being a consultancy that would, like an events consultancy that works within business communities, to be able to provide for them services and bring artists that they do not know and they're not able to get access to, that you have access to. So diversifying also in terms of the arts industry, to go beyond the arts sector and look at other sectors where we can make money, where we can create jobs, where we can also supplement our income. Another example I will give is within us, we have a donor called Dune, and they also have development partners. And as they were speaking, they have, they desire to set up campaigns for the work they are doing. And we were interested, we talked to them and we asked if it is possible for us to produce radio drama series or specialized campaigns for the devolved partners to be able to make money and to create work. And just to mention the African Leadership Academy, they specifically train their artists, but afterwards they look for work. They are constantly networking and looking for arts or spaces where the arts or the artists, the participants or the students they have trained can do internship. So having a collaboration with such organizations can also help us find existing resources to be able to continue our arts management. Then the willingness to collaborate, that's a resource. Us being able to come on the platform and exchange ideas. So peer-to-peer collaborations, looking for like-minded arts managers to create platforms that can bring convenience, just as you were discussing with Funmi and you are discussing about creating modules for arts managers. So collaborations to be able to produce work, like a manual that is needed. And then also existing universities in Africa that actually have arts management courses, like Wits University in South Africa. And then within, if there are arts managers, I mean, if there are universities that only have performing arts management courses, it's possible to audit or to work with the business schools to allow the artists to go to the business school and learn about arts management. Yeah.
Thank you, Rosette. Funmi?
Yeah. I was thinking that of the existing resources, I'd like to talk about the different organizations that exist all over Africa, such as PACE, Pan-African Creative Exchange. There are others like Africalia. There are different organizations that actually exist. I think what is needed is some kind of way of mobilizing that even if it was some kind of network between them, because there are people doing great work in different places. Just flicking through or browsing the last few episodes and just encountering the different speakers, many of them who have established organizations. If there was a network at that level where they could input into, because the important thing is network. This is a professional system, you know, and you're not going to know where the people you can exchange with and collaborate with, other than if they're in a network, you know. So I think we have now got a recognizable number of organizations in different parts of the continent that are doing great work. And if there was some kind of link between them, even if it was an online seminar once a year, do you know what I mean? It would begin something, I think, for arts management or arts management producing or whatever we call it. I think that's important because our focus really is the artist and not so much the arts management. And then we have some entrepreneurial courses, but they're focusing more on product-led, like physical, tangible product, rather than service or events. So there's a different, because the cultural industries, they actually develop a cultural sector. They develop how people relate to each other. They create those kind of spaces. And there's those entrepreneurial, a lot of entrepreneurial programs don't look at it from that perspective. They look at people making clothes or making plates or making products rather than the culture. So I think we've got organizations as existing resources that can be organized. From my experience, I really had a great experience in visiting Burkina Faso. And I found that there were good arts managements trained at a university program there. And I think it was one of the only programs for arts management, maybe besides South Africa, that I had met. There are some organizations which network African universities. There's one called Educational Network of Sub-Saharan Africa, for example. But I find that a lot of our networks focus on very specific issues, maybe like supporting the girl child, looking at poverty alleviation, and most of them are focused at emergencies and not at developing systems that run well. And so I think that some of the university networks we can be tapped into, conferences around the idea of arts management, even if arts management right now is just a module on a theatre arts course, because I think at the moment in most universities it's a module on a theatre arts course, not a course in its own right. But even then, some people take it as their main, major course, or they write their dissertation on it. So I think because this is a new discipline, it's a young discipline, maybe having some kind of university course or network, maybe we can tap into something like the Lagos Studies Association and say, why don't there be a network for young graduates, postgraduates interested in arts administration? It might not be their whole work, that will start developing it as a discipline. I think there needs to, I think such networks will also bring validation to the work. A lot of people, like you were saying, Taiwo, are saying, I'm not validated as an artist until I work internationally. That's because no one's really validating what's happening locally in a lot of the places. It's only the international workers that get validated. You know, that's the thing. No one's giving them awards, no one's giving them certificates, no one's giving, you know. So I think there needs to be some of that and a network, either with industry or academia or both would support that development.
Great, thank you so much. This is this is really great. I kind of feel that you've combined the next question. We'll still ask it anyway, but if there are any other thing you want to add to it, but I feel like both of you have kind of combined it together, which is really the idea of how might we galvanize relationships and partnership to create a robust, nurturing and thriving art management ecosystem in Africa. I think that Funmi and Rosette, you kind of speak to it already. If there's any other thing you want to add to it, by all means, but I don't want us to overflog it. But if you want to add anything to it, for sure. But I feel like you've added, you know, you have spoken to that. So if there, I'll try to just kind of take us a step further and really ask both of you, what kind of future do you both envision? Do you think we should look towards when it comes to art management in Africa? What kind of future do you want to see? Yeah,
I would like to see a more nuanced approach to the idea of arts and culture itself. Because I think it's the idea of arts and culture that we have that leads or does not lead or closes down what we do. As someone said in one of the episodes, culture is the lifestyles we live. And so, I mean, as someone who grew up and lived in Nigeria, I knew that when I was in Lagos, I behaved one way. I'm actually from Ife, so when I went home, I behaved in another way. And when I went to university, I behaved another way. In a way, there was a different cultural set. The culture was not only culture based on our ethnicity, but it's also culture based on our work context. Sometimes it was culture based on areas. And as Africa evolves over time, new cultural contexts are opening up. And if we are looking towards a more equitable future, a more prosperous future, and we're looking for people to be able to explore their own potential, you know, then we need people that recognize this complexity and work with it, because I think we don't work with as much of what's going around us as possible. So I'd like to see the idea of culture bring all of this into play. My mother used to work at Nigerian Television Authority, which is the TV, the government-owned TV within Nigeria. And we have, I mean, NTA, television in Nigeria was established before television in certain parts of Eastern Europe. This would be a subject of study elsewhere. A lot of people don't have a history of the kinds of programs we've produced over the years, you know. Having that, we're beginning to create archives, you know, of what we've done, but without professional and disciplinary development, people don't know how to use archives. People actually don't use the archive because they don't know what's the point of an archive. So if we started, for example, we had a selection of books, the history of television programming in Nigeria, talked about maybe some of the groundbreaking television programs that happened over the years, you know. This has happened a lot in African visual arts. That's where I see a lot of history of visual arts in Africa, I think, is well written about, but other disciplines, not so much. But once you start having this history that's documented, people begin to see themselves in the history. People begin to see gaps in the history. No one can write a complete history. So somebody will read the history and say, by the way, you haven't mentioned this. This happened. Actually, in order to correct this history, I am going to do this program, this event, because I need to, and people begin to see the multidimensionality of arts production. But when we don't have histories of what we've done in our newer institutions, these are new institutions in Africa, the gallery, the museum, but we need histories of those, because those organizations, they bridge a lot. They bridge different communities and the international world. And therefore they play a strong role in cohesiveness within Africa and in creating strong communities. But when there's no history of them, there's no holding of the practices that people have developed. In some places, yes, but in a lot of places, no. What happens, people come with a very narrow view of what culture is and actually don't look at half of or most of what is going on around them and take it for granted and don't build on it. And so what I would like to see in a future, and I suppose this is why I'm very interested in the theorizing and conceptualization of what goes on in the cultural and creative industries, because I believe it will open people's minds to see opportunities of what they can develop and do.
Thanks, Funmi. And I also want to mention, I know that in theater, there's a lot of, theater is a robust discipline that a lot has been written about. Even in mass comm, there's history of, I did my undergrad in Jos, University of Jos, a theater department, we have mass comm, those classes, the history of TV, and different things like that. But we can't say that for every discipline that makes up the culture and creative industries. So thank you for that, from a really, really profound idea.
Can I just say, though, that those histories stay, I think, we don't see general narratives. That's what I'm trying to say. General interest narratives where a young boy can pick up a book in the library and it's almost like a picture book. Do you see what I mean? We might generate them and then they stay within the professionals, and it doesn't really shift the idea of shift the idea of how productive we are actually, so something for general readership also.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks for me. It's a neat idea. Rosette, over to you. What vision, what future do you envision for arts management in Africa?
I envision an arts management that is making money, that is commercialized, that has good business models, and that is evolving. I also envision an arts management in Africa that has good governance systems, and that, picking on what Funmi has said, that documents and archives the works or the modules that they have, and is also interested in research, has data within the arts organization, but data on a macro level. I also envision an arts management that is also blending with the technical advancements, that is not behind, that is able to move together with the global changes that's happening. And envision an arts management that that defines what is arts management in Africa based on their context, not on an outside context, but what is happening within their environment, and continues to define what they're discovering. I envision an arts management that is daring, that is exploring, that has a changed mindset, and that is exciting, and that is respected by other sectors of the economy. And arts management is leading and helping other sectors grow.
Wow, remarkable. Sounds like a great place to bring this entire series to a close, really. Thanks to Funmi and Rosette for offering your thoughts. I think that a lot is happening, and we just want to especially just recognize and appreciate the practitioners, theorists, artists, organizations who are doing these things in their own way, even though they don't seem to be recognized or validated, or they've not won grants or big awards and all of that. But they have committed to putting their blood and their sweat to making the art thrive in their communities. We want to say thank you to them, and thank you to those that are also coming, to those that will help us move ahead, move it forward. This series is a labor of love, really. It's just a way of saying, you know what, this is a conversation. We can start somewhere. And everything we've said in this series, we could commit to taking that and conceptualizing, like Funmi said, theorizing. I think a lot has been said in these 7 episodes. We could start from there and turn that to something that we could theorize and create modules out of that. Like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, we could start from there, and then move, connect to those that are there, the work that many people are doing. So thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for taking the time to spend with us today. And I want to thank all our partners, HowlRound Theatre Commons, for their investment in really advancing, the theatre sector across different parts of the world. It's really powerful, the opportunity that platform like this can offer, right? And so I really want to appreciate them. We've talked about research, and for me personally, I won't be where I am today without research, without committing and investing in research. And this series won't be robust without the work of the various research spaces that I've been part of. So with thanks to the Center for Social Engaged Theatre, and of course thanks to Theatre Hemisphere International and their Social Enterprise Mobile Research Lab. At my formative years, I'm still information, by the way. Even as a full professor, I'm still information. Because we're constantly working and evolving ourselves. Theatre Hemisphere International and Social Enterprise Mobile Research Lab. They were really my own. That was my lab. I was really doing different research without funding, like do research around art mobility, do research around, I went to TerraCulture to do interview, Jimmy Sholanke. Like, I was really fascinated. The kind of work that, we're talking about local and all of that. Jimmy Sholanke worked in a very local setting in Ife and other spaces. TerraCulture, of course, would attend to your big, elites, audience. Like, I was really fascinated with the kind of work that was happening in my communities. And I would go carry on my book and paper, go ask them questions, turn it to, and different things like that. And of course, it evolved beyond that now. So really the power of research. I want to thank those organizations. Thanks to Keninso Concept, that sort of help us in really thinking about who, offering us, connections and, connection to different contacts within the sector. Thanks to Pan-African Creative Exchange, they did the same in terms of offering those kind of support. And again, we were talking about really thinking about resources beyond just money. I think we talked about that in fundraising, is that a lot of the partnerships and the alliances and the networks that we're talking about, it's not just about money. Again, beyond just one way of thinking, these organizations have offered so much, in-kind support by offering, speaking together, try this person, try that person, or have you looked at this one, and different things like that. So thanks to Keninso Concept, thanks to Pan-African Creative Exchange, thanks to La Cité. I was really interested in and really offering space beyond English, because again, when we think about many things on the continent, including this one, as much as we're saying there's not many things written about, discuss about art management on the continent, we'll still have 1 or 2 resources, but it's in English, not necessarily in French or in or in Portuguese and all that, or in Arabic. So I was really interested in also bringing another language. And so thanks to Lasite for really translating and interpreting episode 2 and 5 for that interpretation, and they translated the bios and the questions, and the abstract of each of the episodes and all of that for all the 7 episodes. So thank you for that. And thanks to Natasha for taking the time to believe in this vision. When Nike Pan-African University connected me and Natasha, I had conceptualized and created everything. But I was asking myself when Nike connected us, I'm like, oh, this is an opportunity, really fascinating work that Natasha is doing. And anyway, we hit it off basically, and so thank you to Natasha Emma Eck for just believing in this. It's a random thing, and here we are after 7 episodes, and the work that she's also doing with Pan-African Creative Exchange. Nick has told me a lot about it, and so thank you for all the work around branding, around communications, right? Really developing strategies. Again, that's the kind of alliances that we're talking about, that kind of collaboration. So thank you, and thank you so much. And thank you, Tara Eldred. A lot of the work that I do, I can't do it. I don't do it by myself. I always have people behind. I'm the face to it, but I have so many people working, trying to get things on the background. And so I always want to amplify their work because many times we know that history would always speak about those that use prominent that we see, but we know that it would be so unacceptable for me not to recognize those silent labors. So thank you to Tara Eldred for all the administration, sending emails, reaching out and all of that. Thanks to all my graphic designers that did, working behind the scene, and the same thing and how around, the video will be ready and then it's up there. Somebody did the editing. We may not know their names, but thank you to all of them. Thank you to Gabriel Friday at the center, and Tebere International and Mobile Research Lab, to Caleb. Like, these are really remarkable folks that I'm working with, that you just see the video appear, the image appear. It's a lot of hours. And so I just want to shout out to all of them. And then finally, thank you to all our resource persons, 14 remarkable art leaders on the continent. Like, honestly, I'm blown away. The kind of expertise and experience that you've all brought to the table. I'm really pumped, and I'm really hopeful that if we can galvanize, if we can mobilize, if we can really strategically engage with all of these resources and many more, I think that we will, the future is bright. So with that, I want to say thank you. I'll pass it on to Natasha if there's anything she wants to say, and then I'll bring it to a close. Over to you, Natasha.
Thank you, Tyra. I just wanted to say thank you so much for inviting me to co-host with you. The series has been amazing. It's been such a rich and rewarding experience. I feel really lucky just to have been here and been able to log on and meet these wonderful people who are doing great work. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. With that, I also want to say there's so much to come. I'm really, thinking, strategizing with so many individuals and organizations on the continent. And so I'm hopeful that something is going to come out of this. This is just the beginning. So for those that might be watching this later, if you're interested in engaging, please reach out. My email address is taiwo.afolabi@gmail.com. My personal email, my university is taiwo.afolabi@uregena.ca. I'm happy to engage. I'm thinking about capacity building. I'm thinking about research. I'm thinking about all of these things that we're talking about. How can we really operationalize them? And in addition to what is existing. So again, this is not new. We're saying how can we do more and do more to be able to reach more folks and amplify all that is happening. So again, thank you to Rosette. And I also want to mention that Asiimwe Deborah Kawe couldn't be here. And so please send our regard to Asiimwe, the amazing work that she's doing in Kenya and on the continent. I really appreciate that. And again, thank you to Funmi for taking the time to be here. Really appreciate you. And Rosette, thank you so much for really taking the time to be here. So with that, we want to say the series has come to a close. And I want to shout out to Pan-African Creative Exchange. They have their their showcase in July in South Africa, in Bloemfontein. So folks, if you want to connect with that, and also from the 9th to 13th of July, just letting folks know that. And again, there are different opportunities on the continent. So please feel free to connect others, and always thinking, we want to think globally, but we also want to act locally, personally, and in terms of our community. So think of your context all the time and what ways that you can continue to make your work robust. And whether you get the award or you don't get it, remember, your work matters, and it's really indeed important, and we thank you for that. So with that, it's Taiwo Afolabi signing out. Thank you so much, everyone, and hopefully you found this really useful, and look forward to the amazing work you're going to do. Thank you, and thank you. Bye, everyone.